Hope you've enjoyed the array of emerging artists we've had on the show so far. And now we're joined by the incredible Lauren Temple, who's come in, and I was envious of her tattoos whilst we were listening to George Michael. Lauren, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm brilliant, man. Really, really good. Yes, impressive tattoos and impressive artists as well with words. Really, really cool. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Lauren. I'm a poet and youth worker. I run poetry workshops and I work with Young Identity, who are a literature organisation. They're a charity and they run free workshops. We have like publishing opportunities as well and performance opportunities. So I do mostly work with them.
I'm a big fan of Young Identity. They need no introduction on this show. That's amazing. It's amazing what they do. So how long have you been writing for?
I've always written, but when I was a kid, it was, I wrote stories, but I never finished them. So then when I discovered poetry, it was amazing because I'm like, oh wow, this can be short. I actually have the attention span for this. But I only started writing poetry back in 2019 when I joined Young Identity, actually. I went along to one of their workshops with a friend, and then, I've been writing ever since then.
This sounds like a difficult question, but what is poetry to you?
No, it is a good question because there's a lot of perceptions about what poetry is. Like, everyone always thinks it's something that rhymes, it has to have a strict form. But for me, like, poetry, all it really is storytelling in a condensed form. So obviously some poems can be long as well, but it's like you can be more abstract with poetry and it's more condensed, so you really get your message through and it's like punchy. But for me, like, a lot of my poems are stories. They're just kind of stories condensed into a shorter form. I see myself as a storyteller, first and foremost.
How do you go about the writing process? Do you sort of sit down and do it in a linear way? Do you set yourself a brief? How does that work?
It depends. I shouldn't rely on the kind of that feeling you get where you have to rush to your pen and paper and write, but a lot of the time I do. But what helps me is going to workshops because they'll set prompts, and then we do a lot of things called free writes, which is basically where you get set a prompt and then you just write for 10 minutes or so, and whatever comes into your head you have to write down, even if I don't know what to write. So it's an unfiltered thing, and then from there you can try and find the poem within it, but that kind of gets you warmed up and gets you writing. But a lot of the time, I think upon something that's happened to me or a story that I've heard, and then I kind of write from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So is it biographical then, do you find?
Sometimes. Oftentimes it starts from true stories, not necessarily mine, but someone, my family, a friend, or some. I used to work in a care home until fairly recently, so I definitely found all the stories of the residents really interesting and inspirational. But with poetry, I find that it's not important if the story's true, but it has to be emotionally true. So you could tell a story about something that didn't happen at all, or part of it happened, part of it's fictionalized, but you're choosing the words that fit the emotion that you're trying to convey, if that makes sense. So that's what's important to me, is that it's emotionally authentic.
Do you write for yourself or do you write for an audience?
I used to write for myself, now I write for an audience, because even though I love writing poetry, performing is my thing now. I love performing. I recently started doing drag, actually, drag king. Yeah. But I want to go more experimental in my performance as well, and I just kind of love performing and creating that connection with an audience and stuff. And as I said, I'm a storyteller, so I like telling the story, if that makes sense. But you got to write the story to begin with.
How do you find that? So you've been writing for ages, but now you're more interested in the performance side. Mm-hmm. How have you found that sort of love of knowing that you're going to perform for other people has affected your writing? Oh,
definitely. It's kind of subconsciously in the back of my head. When I'm writing something, it's in the past, I used to write a lot about mental health because that was something I struggled with a lot, and still do to an extent, but not as much. So when I was writing, I was very much writing for myself to get my emotions out, whereas now it's there probably is some of that emotion behind it, but I'm writing to share a story. But I think it's very much subconscious. I'm not thinking at the time, how would this sound? It's more, then when I come to edit, I read it, I perform it aloud and to other people and stuff like that, and I see kind of what reaction I get from that. To kind of tell how I'd like to edit the poem then. So it's more of an after thing, a editing process.
And in terms of poetry influences, or maybe someone in the arts? Is there anyone that you've sort of looked up to in your career?
I mean, like proper, like professional poets.
Don't say proper poets. Don't say proper poets.
Literally, when I said that, I was like, I'm telling myself off instantly for that. But like, poets that, like, you know what I mean. Anyway, like I really like Mary Oliver, Joy Hajo, Ocean Vuong. They're like favorite poets. But I'd say like most of the time I'm just inspired by like the young poets around me. Like as I said, I only started writing like 2019, and before that I really didn't get poetry. I thought it was this boring thing that rhymed. I'm not completely against rhyming poems, by the way, for context. But the people within my organisation, the creative director Shirley May is just such an inspiration. Like,
Shirley is a Tory force. I love her.
Honestly, she's amazing. She's got her own book out, and she's a storyteller as well. Like, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, she certainly is. If I could wave a magic wand, right, Lauren, and in 5 years' time, where would you like to be in your career?
Where would I like to be? For me, like, I'm really interested in kind of nurturing a community. So I'd love to kind of have some kind of community space that I like run and like can facilitate things and help mentor other people there, and like, yes, around poetry, but also around other arts and stuff. I actually have a dream that I've always had of like owning a forest and running like a community centre there.
Nice.
Which seems crazy, but like I've looked into it.
I don't think that's as crazy an idea as you know, maybe some people believe, because you could rent some forest space.
Well, you can
do retreats. You know?
can get forest land for not that expensive, but then it's like you can't live on it. But there's ways around it.
We'll talk after the show. Okay, you're going to perform for us live?
Yes.
Right, I'm not going to pronounce it because we tried this from George Michael and I butchered it, so I don't want to do that to your work. So do you want to introduce it and then you can take it away?
Yes, so this is Helianthus, which is literally just a scientific name for sunflowers. And I wrote this when I started working in a care home I previously worked at, so it's inspired by the residents there, and who a lot of them had dementia, and kind of like how people perceive dementia versus how it actually is working with people with dementia. So yeah, it's called Helianthus. The sunflower clutches tightly to itself like a choking throat. I ask her what the flower smells like, and she replies, butterflies, and tells me a story about a butterfly that used to visit her window. She said, I used to talk to it every day, tell it all my worries, and then it would nod its little head as if it was listening to me. As she spoke, the sunflower opened. Somewhere out there, far away in a white room, there is a woman dressed in white, testing the memory of mice. But what do mice know of loneliness and nostalgia? Right now, there are millions of butterflies cocooning themselves back into caterpillars, searching for sunflowers in place of sun. But once you have snipped the stems off a sunflower, it cannot reconnect that part of itself. Place the flowers in water. Let bees and hummingbirds gather until the very last nectar of light.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Really. And the words were great, and it's just, you are a performance poet. I mean, you just sat there and you could see it in your face when you were performing. I love that. Tell us where we can check more of your work out online.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Lauren Temple Poet. I have a website as well, that's just laurentemplepoet.co.uk. But yeah, on my Instagram is where I post everything that's going on. And you can come to my workshop on a Wednesday in Old Trafford at OT Creative Spaces, which is with Young Identity. It's free and it's for 13 to 25-year-olds, and we like to have fun. So we do creative writing, but we also do like arts and crafts, games. It's just good fun. But,
that sounds brilliant. I mean, too old for that market myself, but yeah, I would love to. It does sound great.
Sneaking.
Yeah, that'd make a change. Sneaking in for stuff I'm too old for. Yeah, get some fake ID. You're right. We've also got you in because we're going to challenge you with our quiz.
I'm excited for this.
Good. That's the response we want. We've thrown it on a couple of people.
I love quizzes.
Right. So it's called "Do You Know Your Art?" From your elbow. You get 1 minute.
Okay.
General knowledge.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Who wrote the epic poem Paradise Lost?
I'll skip.
John Milton. Which poet penned the famous lines, "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me"?
Emily Dickinson.
Correct. What is the term for a 40-line poem written in iambic pentameter?
Oh, sonnet? No.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Who painted the Mona Lisa?
Oh, Da Vinci. Yeah.
Were you convinced? Which famous playwright wrote Romeo and Juliet?
Oh, Hamlet.
No, William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare. Why is it Hamlet? William Shakespeare.
That's it. First answer. Which artist is known for cutting off part of his own ear?
Oh, Van Gogh.
Yes. In music, what does the term allegro mean?
Skip.
Fast and lively. Which Renaissance artist painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City? 5 seconds.
I know, like,
Guess.
something he did, but I can't remember his name. Never mind, skip.
Who wrote the play? I've started, so I'll finish. Who wrote the play Waiting for Godot?
Oh, I studied that one at uni. I should know it. I can tell you a fun fact about it.
Please, tell us the fun fact and I'll tell you the right
Okay,
answer.
so when the playwright, whoever he was, when he started doing the play, he was doing it for these big audiences, these like posh people basically who didn't understand it but clapped anyway. But then he actually went and performed it in a prison, and the prisoners really understood it because they knew what it was like to wait.
Ah,
You know
well,
him?
do you know who it is yet? Samuel Beckett.
Beckett.
Well done anyway, Lauren.
I can't believe I said Hamlet for.
Yes. You got
Oh my
4
God.
out of 10 there, which puts you in second place. Behind Dave Viner and above Tom Stocks.
I'm really mad at myself for saying Hamlet. Never
Sorry,
mind.
you'll be kicking
I'll live.
yourself on the tram
Yeah.
on the way back home. Right, can you just remind us one last time, Lauren, where we can check out your work online?
Yes, so you can find me at Lauren Temple Poet on Instagram. That's where I post everything.
Lauren, absolute pleasure, and brush
you.
up on your Samuel Beckett, and Hamlet didn't write Romeo and Juliet.
Oh my god.
BBC Upload.
BBC Upload.
The best in new comedy, poetry, and spoken word.
Yeah, Lauren was an absolute joy to have in the studio, so please make sure you're checking out her work. And if you want to be on the show, maybe you fancy yourself on the quiz, or maybe as an emerging artist, you can get involved with Do You Know Your Art from Your Elbow? Go to bbc.co.uk/upload, get involved in the show, whether you're doing spoken word, podcasting, maybe you're writing books, maybe you're a filmmaker, anything at all. Each and every week we have an abundance of brilliant creativity that comes out of the Northwest, and like I say, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to share that with you. And if you are making something out there, I invite you onto the show. Got a couple of tunes before I say goodbye, but as it is Birds of a Feather, Billie Eilish, and after that, a bit of Lewis Capaldi. Whatever you're up to, I hope you're enjoying yourselves.